Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Artur. I'm a product manager on Android System UI.
I'm Mady. I'm an engineer on Android System UI.
And I'm Jason. I'm an engineer on Android System UI.
And we're here to talk to you about Android slices and how you can use them to build interactive results for Google Search. So before we get into the details, I wanted to start by answering the question of what slices are. And at a high level, slices are Android's new approach for remote content. There's a couple of important aspects to this. The first is that slices are templated. What we mean by this is that we're going to provide you with a flexible and rich mode of expressing your app that's also predictable and dependable so that they can be presented by a wide variety of surfaces. Slices are also interactive. These templates house a variety of components to enable anything from rich content previews to inline task completion. And also, slices are updatable. We're going to be able to iterate much more quickly than the traditional platform releases to enable new places for these slices to appear and new types of slices for you to express your app. Most importantly, slices are backwards compatible all the way back to Android KitKat, which means that as they launch, they're going to be available for 95% of Android devices. So let's dig into some of these in a little bit more detail. When we say slices are templated, we mean that we're providing you with a rich layout and content system to enable a wide variety of app use cases. These templates are not plug and play. They're flexible in that you define a wide variety of elements and define them in a priority order so that to enable a rich variety of ways to express your app. Anything from a weather forecast to a reservation, music playlist to home automation. And Maddie's going to go into a lot more details on how you construct these. Slices are also interactive. They're not just static data. They can house a variety of components, anything from real-time data fetched directly from the APK on a user's device, for example, surfacing the latest prices for ride-sharing, as well as rich controls like actions, toggles, sliders, and scrolling content, so that users can complete the task inline right where the slice is being presented. Slices are bundled with Jetpack. That means that we can more frequently expand and iterate slices. That means we can add more presenting surfaces to expand your app's reach, more templates to represent your app's use cases, and more controls and components to make those slices more engaging and more powerful for users. Here's an example of a potential new messaging template that we're exploring for the future. So all of this sounds pretty great, but the really important question is, where are slices going to be available for users? Where are we launching? This year, slices are launching in Search, where we're going to use slices to enhance app predictions as the user is searching. There are going to be two main use cases in terms of how slices will appear. The first is for app names. So as a user is searching for the name of your app, we'll be able to surface what you may call a canonical slice for your app to help accelerate some sort of task. But we'll also support general term searches so that users are able to search for an app deep link or a specific feature. And of course, because slices are backwards compatible, when they start appearing in Search, you'll be able to reach all hundreds of millions of users that are available on Google Search today. This is really important because with slices, you're going to be able to enable a wide variety of really great use cases for folks on Search. For example, here are a couple of 3 buckets that we are liking to share to get your juices flowing. The first is a navigation use case. This is in the sense that the user is searching for something that they already know they want to get to. For example, the user knows that they already want to get a ride home. Well, with slices, you can use real-time data to provide additional context for that decision so that they know the price and time to their destination, and they can just start thinking about booking the ride right from the search results. They also enable inline task completion. You might be able to use those interactive controls I was referring to earlier so that apps like settings can enable users to quickly search for a setting and toggle it inline. And finally, you can use slices to enable recall and discover use cases. Users might be searching for things that they didn't even realize is available in your app, but because it's installed on their device and that you can surface slices for it, you might serendipitously surface that content for them to explore. But this is only just the beginning. Our goal with slices is to enable one reusable API to generalize remote content in Android. And different things that we're exploring is trying to make slices more tightly integrated into the system, as well as more Google platforms. I'm going to hand it off to Jason to talk a little bit more about slices architecture.
Thanks, Artur. Well, in a minute, Maddie's going to walk you through actually building your first slices. But before that, I want to give you a little bit of an idea of how slices work and how they look under the hood. So slices, what a slice actually is in terms of implementation is it's structured data. And that structured data contains other slices, content, and presentational hints. And so one thing to note, this is not actually code on the screen. I know it looks kind of like a DSL. But this is really a string representation of what you would construct once you're actually done building a slice. There are a few things that we extract out of this information. The structure that it has determines the template. And like what we're seeing, like this example of a horizontal weather slice. It also contains the content itself, icons, text, pending intents for interactivity. And the other thing to note is that this contains all of the data for the slice, no matter the format. Maddie's going to talk you through all of the formats that we have for slices right now and how we may add more in the future, too. But a single slice that you return in your app will actually hold all of the formats. And so on the right, we have a shortcut version of that same slice. And that is using the exact same data to present in a different format. All right, so how do apps actually get a hold of slices from your app? So slices sit on top of content providers. Slice provider extends a content provider. Don't worry, we try to hide as much of the content provider as possible for you. But there are a few really nice things that come out of this, is that they're based on top of content URIs, which means you can have a wide variety of slices hosted from your app. And when an app wants to show your slice, you'll get a callback to onBind slice, and you'll get a URI, and you'll get to decide what content you want to connect to that URI and return it in that slice that I just showed you. But then they're interactive, so you need to actually be able to update that. And the way that works is through a notify change. You send a standard content provider notify change on your slice URI, and whoever is presenting your slice will know that it's time to update, and they'll give you another callback. And you can return different data that is dynamic and changes in response to whatever has happened. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Mady, who's going to walk you through building your first slice.
Thanks, Jason, for that architectural overview. I'm going to walk you through an app creating this Wi-Fi slice today. So we're going to build a slice provider that provides this Wi-Fi slice that has this toggle, and tapping the toggle will turn Wi-Fi on and off. And then the connected state will change based on the Wi-Fi state. So the first thing you got to do is define a slice provider in your Android manifest. As Jason mentioned, slices are built on top of content providers, so similar to a content provider, you got to define it here. This lets the operating system be able to find your slices. Then you have to implement your slice provider. This slice provider handles multiple slices here. So we have a Wi-Fi slice, an alarm slice, and a nightlight slice. So what will happen when something is trying to display your slice, you might type in Wi-Fi into Google search, and it's going to do some ranking stuff that Jason will go into some details later. And it'll map that search term to a content URI, and in our case, that content URI will be this Wi-Fi path. Based on that, we're going to build a Wi-Fi slice. So we'll jump into this method. Slices start with list builders. So list builder accepts different kinds of rows of content. This Wi-Fi slice is fairly simple. It's a single row. So we first start with our list builder. We build a row builder based off of it. We add the Wi-Fi title. And then we kind of do this weird thing where we check if Wi-Fi state is loaded. Maybe it takes some time for us to determine whether Wi-Fi is connected or not, and we need to do that in the background. In the meantime, we're still going to return a slice with the content we intend to display, but we kind of note that this content is loading. So the toggle, we don't know the state, and the connected text, we don't know whether we're connected or not. So these two pieces, we need to indicate that they're going to be loaded. We do that just by passing null and a Boolean on the builder methods. We then add that row to the list builder, and we build the slice. So meanwhile, our Wi-Fi state has been loading. Maybe when this is done, we get a call back to on Wi-Fi state loaded. We flip our flag. And now we need to let the UI know to update. So our Wi-Fi slice is being displayed somewhere, and is our sad little loading state with just the Wi-Fi text. So we need to let it know to update to get that subtitle string and the toggle action, and we do that with content resolver notify change on the full content URI for that slice. So you'll get a call to onBind slice again. It'll be the same Wi-Fi URI. You'll walk into your build Wi-Fi slice method. And this time, our Wi-Fi state is loaded, so we can check whether we're connected or not, set that subtitle text, and create our toggle action. So this get Wi-Fi toggle action is going to create a slice action. This is how we represent actions in slices. So the slice action basically wraps the pending intent and then takes some extra information to represent the action. In our case, we want to respond to someone tapping on the toggle. So we need to have a broadcast receiver to receive that pending intent and do some stuff to update Wi-Fi state. So we build our slice action with that intent, a label describing the action, and then a Boolean value representing whether this toggle is on or off. So in our case, the Wi-Fi state. So when you tap on that toggle, that pending intent gets sent. You'll define a broadcast receiver for your app to handle this intent. In our case, we need Wi-Fi manager to update Wi-Fi state. Something neat that Slices does for toggles is, so if the Wi-Fi was on, I tap on that toggle, that pending intent gets sent. We'll attach the resulting state of the toggle, this extra toggle state, to that intent so that you can retrieve it and know what the new state of the toggle is. We'll use that to update the Wi-Fi, and then we're going to notify our content URI so that any Wi-Fi slices being displayed know to update because Wi-Fi state has changed. So how do you test these? Right now, we've got this great tool, Slice Viewer. It allows you to input your content URIs for your slices, and then you can preview your slice. It'll display the slices in different modes. So as Jason mentioned, we had that shortcut and then larger templates. So this tool will allow you to exercise those different modes that slices support. And the Getting Started guide is great. I'd highly recommend it. So that's kind of the summary of creating a slice from an app. You have your slice provider in your manifest. You implement it. You map your content URIs to the different slices that your app supports. And then you build them and handle any events. And of course, test. OK, templates. Slices has a really great templating system. We think it's pretty flexible, and we hope that'll be able to support many of your app use cases. This is an overview of the different row types we support. So as I mentioned, everything starts with list builder. And list builder, you attach different rows to it. So this slide sort of shows the different rows that we support. And you see text, toggles, sliders, progress bars, different kinds of grid layouts. And these are all kind of flexible. So nothing is enforcing requirements of content, so you can kind of pick and choose how you use these. So as mentioned, you add these to List Builder, and you can kind of see in these layouts how you can express your app uniquely with the system. So Wi-Fi Slice here is composed of just different types of rows. It supports the toggle. It can do a list of Wi-Fi networks. Our reservation slice for your upcoming trip in Seattle gives you the important information, gives you a preview of your rental, and then check-in, check-out locations using a big picture and then a grid layout with 2 cells. And then our music slice. It's interactive. You can favorite things. You can control your music from it. It's scrollable. So I hope that you can see how your app use cases could be represented in our template system. So multiple formats. As Jason mentioned, you provide a slice with all of the data we need to present in these different formats. We want slices to be able to move across the operating system in different spaces, and they might need to shift their form based on that. So we're supporting a shortcut form, which is just a small tappable icon, a small slice, which is the first row of your slice generally, and then a large slice, which is all of the content. So when you're building your slice, keep that in mind. Make sure you test the different modes so that the slice displays how you expect it to in these formats. Things presenting slices can also customize them. So they've got some flexibility with increasing font size, changing the font style, and maybe overriding any colors that you set. Because we want slices to sort of feel at home in the surface that they're being presented in. So I'm going to walk you through an example to build this home slice, which allows you to control your temperature and see the many video cameras that you might have in your home. So again, starts with the list builder. Here we're defining 2 slice actions for turning the temperature up and turning the temperature down. These just take a pending intent, icon compat, and then a label. We create our row. We set our title and subtitle, add the 2 actions, add the row to the list, and then we've got that top part of the slice. So we'll do the second part now, the camera snapshots. Maybe we'll get our data for this. This is a grid row, so we'll define a grid row builder. And then for each of the data elements we're displaying in these cells, we'll add a cell to the grid builder. And the cell will take an image, title text, and text. And these are displayed in the order that you add them to the cell builder. So if you want to mix them up, they don't need to be image, text, text. It could be text, image, text. So again, it's flexible. Add that grid row to the list, and then you've built your slice. And Jason is going to take it away to describe how you can get these slices appearing in Google Search.
Thanks, Mady. All right, so like Artur said, we've got 2 cases that we're talking about for Google Search. These are both showing up in predictions. So you can tap on the search bar, type a few characters, and the user will be interacting with your app basically at that point. One thing to note, this is only for apps installed on your device. We aren't currently doing anything with instant apps or stuff from the cloud. And these next few slides are really just a preview. We're going to be launching all sorts of documentation when we officially ship this later this summer. All right, so let's talk through how you do this for an app name. There are 2 things you really need to do in this case. You need to link a specific slice to your main activity of your app. That's the activity that shows up in Launcher and the activity that with the name that users will search for. And you need to grant some permissions. So linking the activity is actually really, really simple. You just add 1 piece of metadata into your manifest. And that metadata points at any slice URI you want within your app. And that's the URI that you can expect to get bound when the users type in the name of your app. You also need to grant these permissions explicitly to search and play services so that it has access to read your slice and display it properly. We'll talk a bit more about permissions in a little bit, but these are basically the lines of code you need to do for a default slice or an app slice. OK, so the bit more broad range of general terms. This is a little bit more complicated. Another thing to note is that ranking may vary. Is that search is going to try to present whatever content is best for the user, and so you can't always guarantee that your app is going to be shown. But that can be enhanced with a bit of usage reporting and stuff like that. There are a few things you need to do here. This is based on top of Firebase app indexing, which is existing APIs. You can go read about them. We've got a link on the next slide. And you tie those Firebase app indexing content directly to a slice. And so that will let search know when it triggers that app indexable that it should be showing a slice for that. So the way you do that is when you are pushing your app indexable, there is some metadata you can tag. There's new APIs on app indexing that will be launched with this, which will let you specify your slice URI. Another piece of this is that there's a little bit of content validation. So when you're doing app indexing, you need to specify a content URL. And that content URL needs to map to the same slice that you're specifying with your app. It's just a linking sort of a system to verify that you've got the right content showing. And so the way that works is there are 2 things you need to do. One is you need to add an intent filter to your provider. These have been supported but are rarely used in Android for some time. These look very similar to app linking. If you're familiar with verified app linking or app linking, this will look pretty similar to you. This intent filter is an example. It's looking for anything on https:/example.com/anything. You can also do, if you don't have app linking set up for your app, you can do your own URL schemes. Like in the settings app in Android, we're doing settings : / whatever for our deep links, and that's our URL scheme. The other thing you do is once you've added an intent filter for your provider, you can expect that you're going to get calls to on-map intent to URI. This lets your app say, I've got some incoming intent data, and intents are kind of squishy. Intents aren't as defined as a URI. And this gives you the moment to say, like, here, I'm going to take this intent, and I'm going to resolve it to an exact URI, and this is the slice I want to show. And so you can do whatever you want within this function to determine your path. In this case, it's just kind of like taking the data off from the intent and pushing it over to authority which is a slice provider. But you can add your own logic of your own kind. And that's how you add those. All right, so that's kind of a whirlwind tour. I know we'll be launching more docs with that when we officially launch search. Now, hopefully, your slices are holding all sorts of really great content, and you don't want to expose that content to the world. So you probably really care about how the permissions work here. So there are 3 ways that an app can get a hold of permissions for your slice. The first is you get fine-grained permission controls. These are very similar to URI permissions, except we design them to scale up because we expect people to have a lot of slices over time. These happen automatically for you if you're using the Firebase app indexing APIs we just told you about. We'll do those permission grants for you. You notice in the default app slice, you didn't have that Firebase app indexing, which is why you had to grant the permissions yourself. The second case that is different about these from URI permissions is that the user can grant permission. When an app doesn't have permission to show your slices, the system will return what we call a permission slice. And it looks something like this on the right, where it says, like, hey, this app's trying to show slices from someone else, and the user can actually explicitly grant. And the third case of where apps can get slice permissions is that on P+, we're auto-granting permission to launcher and the assistant to really be able to do seamless kinds of slice integrations in the future. And so if the user clicks on that permission slice that I mentioned, they're going to see a dialog, and they can choose either to grant permissions or not to grant permissions, try to give them some transparency as to what's going on and how they're exposing data from your app. So how does this work for you? The way it works for you is that you should extend Slice Provider, because you're going to need to for everything. And Slice Provider is going to handle all of this permission checking for you. It's going to do all of it. Please don't add Android : permission to your providers as you're used to in your manifest. That's going to break everything. And also, if you have really, really sensitive data, if you're something like a banking app and you feel like, oh no, users could really, really shoot themselves in the foot here, you can override onCreate permission request, and that will let you disable the user grant and redirect them to some other dialog. You can have your own sort of flow there to ensure privacy. All right, and I'm going to pass it back to Artur to wrap things up.
Awesome. So that was a lot of information. If you're interested in learning more, please go to this short link, g.co/slices. In here is everything related to our Getting Started guide, as well as links to use and download the Slices viewer, building your first slice, and all the details that you need to know about creating all the rich templates that Mady talked about. We'll also be available today and tomorrow at office hours. That'll be posted on our thank you slides, as well as the Android sandbox if you have any direct questions. We also want to hear from you, so please go to this google.com/io/schedule link to provide feedback on this session. But thank you all again so much for coming in the wee hours of the morning and hearing us talk about slices as well. Again, you can follow these to follow-up actions to learn more. We also have a bit of time for questions right now if anyone has anything burning that they want to ask.